Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Jason today. Jason's an individual from out in the Pacific Northwest. We were introduced through a comment that came in over on the TikTok side of things. So I reached out to him, and thankfully he was able to reach back out afterwards. Jason, it's a privilege to have you on the show today to share what you experienced a while back there in Washington. But is there anything that our listeners would need to know about you before we get going with things?
I'm 50 years old. I'm a very avid bow hunter and outdoorsman. I've been hunting legally with a license since I was 10 years old, and I've hunted in about every state in all 50 for just about every kind of big game animal. And I know the woods real well and every type of animal that there is to know.
Feel free to take us back to where we need to be, the location as best as you can give it,
sure.
And what happened to you that day.
Me and my dad, we were out of state elk hunting up in Washington, a little town called Chinook up there, which is just on the other side of the Astoria-Megler Bridge, the one that crosses the big Columbia River there, 5 miles long. And we were coming back on the last day of elk season and heading from Chinook towards Nacelle, and just about exactly 1 mile past the Astoria-Megler Bridge. On the left-hand side, I looked over, and standing maybe 80 yards out in the jack firs, real thick trees, stood a Bigfoot just standing on a stump, and he just appeared to be gazing out across the big bay there that's 5 miles out. And so I stopped the car immediately right in the highway, and I thought at first it was a statue or like maybe it was a prank of some sort, but there stood a giant 8 or 9 foot, tan in color, hairy monster looking thing just standing peacefully overlooking the bay. And he stood there for about 15 seconds while I backed up traffic and got a really good look at him. My dad's seen him as well, and he just took a step off the stump and was vanished back into the thin air. But it was about 11:30 in the afternoon, and it was a clear day at the coast, and he wasn't far off. And so that was pretty much the experience that I had with the Bigfoot. It was tan in color, maybe 7 to 9 feet tall or so. One thing that really stood out about him is it was really square chested. It almost looked like it was a box. His profile was so square that it almost looked like it was like a SpongeBob style box body style on him that was really wide, maybe 4.5 feet, 5 feet wide. It was really built, looked like a male for sure. And so that's my story. That's what we've seen down there. Definitely something that you wouldn't mistaken for a different animal of any kind. I bear hunt in Idaho. I'm a bear hunt in Oregon. I bear hunt in Washington. I know bears and their profile between a black bear, a grizzly bear, all sorts of animals. And that was definitely not anything that was normal to be standing there on 2 feet.
So September 19th of what year?
This year.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That was this year. And it was exactly 1 mile past the Astoria-Megler Bridge heading to Nacelle, Washington there. It's really a swampy country down there. It's all the tide pools and that type of thing. There's a lot of swampy country right in there. And where he was standing was just about in a really swampy tidal area that just had some sloughs running through it that are just real mucky, just a real wetland swamp type of area where he was.
So some listeners that weren't listening super closely, they might say maybe it was a statue, but it sounds like you saw it actually step off the stump and then
When we stopped, it immediately took notice of the vehicle stopping, turned, and looked into our direction. And that's when I knew immediately that this was a real animal, that I wasn't looking at something that was like a prank or something. Because it had a Bigfoot profile, like what you always see of a Bigfoot. It looked like that, completely perfect like that, except it was just square and it was tan in color. But at first glimpse, I thought maybe I was looking at somebody's prank or a statue. Often they had set out in the woods there, and until I got the car stopped fully to see what it was. But it was definitely alive and well.
So what kind of movements did it have to take for it to turn and then walk away?
It just simply just knelt down, one leg off the stump and the other one, and just turned and off into the jack firs where it was real thick, where he was about the only visible thing other than the trees there. It was just it's really brushy down there. And he was the only visible thing. He just looked like he was gazing out over the bay when we first seen him, just staring off over the 5 Mile Bay there.
Wow. In order for it to turn, was it able to turn its head first, or did it have to turn all its body?
It turned, it's pretty much just almost the same motion as a person would. Mm-hmm. He just turned his chest mostly, and then his hips, and just took one step off the stump, and he was gone.
Was its arms just hanging by its side when you saw it, or what was going on?
His arms were straight down by its side, just standing there perfectly, almost like I said, almost like it was a statue or something like that somebody had put out there. But he was just looking out in the bay. It was crazy.
How long or how far down did those arms and hands go on the creature?
Probably to between his hip and his knee. It wasn't really super hairy. It seemed like his hair was, the fur on it or whatever it was not super shaggy or anything looking like that. It seemed to be pretty neat versus like 6 or 7 inch hair. This had maybe 2 to 3 inch hair at the most.
And what color did you say it was again?
It was tan, almost the color of wood. Mm. Yeah, it was just all tan, and it was all the same exact color, head to toe.
So you're saying that it looked neat. Do you mean like the way that the hair looked, like it was kept
up?
Yeah,
the hair looked. It looked. It didn't look all shaggy or mangy or anything like that. It was 3 inch at the most hair. It looked tight to his body.
Interesting. Like it had been groomed at all, or maybe not?
No, not at all. But it was, I guess, some animals have a really pretty look to them, their fur or whatnot, like elk and stuff. They have a really nice looking fur. It not like a dog where it's all mangy looking or long or anything. It wasn't a shaggy looking animal by any means.
Were there parts of it that were not covered by hair?
Just the face, and the face was not a whole lot of hair to the face at all. It just started about at the ears or so and back. It wasn't far off the road, so we got a really good look at it. And like I said, I stopped traffic because I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Absolutely. So you were able to see ears then?
Yeah, I was able to see some protrusions of ears. Can't really say that I seen its actual ears, but they were covered in the hair or fur that it had.
Ah, okay. So maybe even where the ears would be, but they were far under
covered in hair.
I see. Okay.
Right.
That's really interesting. Were you able to get a good look at the details of the actual face itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And it looked like a male, like it really had male characteristics to its face. It definitely looked like a boy, and it was really square chested too. It looked just almost like a box sitting there staring out into the bay. The way its chest was, it just was just a square shape to him, really big and square.
Did you get a feeling of how old it might have been?
Looking at it, it looked to be like probably, man, I would say in its 50s.
Okay. Gotcha.
Something like that, of that type of face to it. It definitely was a boy. Just the way it looked, I could just tell it was a boy.
Absolutely. Were there?
And at that time, I noticed we were hunting out of state, and I noticed that the area down there was completely covered in blackberries I hadn't seen. We're from that area, and I hadn't seen the blackberries this thick. There was hundreds of pounds per foot on the blackberries, and they were just an incredible season down there. And then on top of that, I know that the fish were running through all the rivers around there, the coastal streams, really heavy at the time.
So it's the perfect time for it to be there. So much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Food.
Plus, the elk, we were there hunting elk. They're in the middle of the rut. So you got the elk, which are really vocal, and they're in the middle of the rut. The salmon, of course, that are spawning in the rivers. And then the blackberries were just incredible. All the berries were just really incredibly thick down there.
Did it have much of a neck at all that you could see?
Not much of a neck whatsoever. Its head just went into its shoulders, and they were really just squared off and wide.
Sure. How far across would you say those shoulders would be approximately?
A good 4.5 feet or so, maybe 4 foot, really wide. It looked like really a barrel-chested, big type of upper body was really squared off and looked like a big weightlifter style body.
Absolutely. Did you notice any shape to the head at all?
Yeah, it was a little bit elongated compared to a human. Its face was longer in length, looked like as far as the Bigfoot's, almost like chimpanzee style look to its face.
That's interesting. The hair, was there hair on top of the head?
Yep, okay. He was covered head to toe in hair. Besides its face, looked like hair on its hands, hair everywhere. Like on his stomach, it looked like the hair was lighter, like maybe, I don't know if you would say rubbed, but just thinner down through its stomach.
That's interesting. Were there any parts where so sometimes I get reports where the person will say, oh, so it was a black colored Sasquatch, but there was a weird part where there was almost like a different pattern to the color on it. Were there any other color patterns?
No, this one was just, if you looked at like an old dead field of grass, that it's all brown and tan, but it's got a little bit of darker sections in it, just a slight variance. It was that color, almost a dirty tan.
How far? So the hair on top of the head, how far did that go down? When did it stop on? Did it have a normal hairline like we would have as humans, or did it go far down the forehead? Or
it was almost parted in the middle. Like I said, it didn't have real super long hair, but you could definitely tell that its head hair looked a little bit longer than the rest of its body.
Interesting. Was the hair coming down then, or was it like it was head?
Yeah, it was coming down. It was coming down. It was coming down.
Okay. How big of a forehead did it have?
Pretty large forehead, probably maybe 6 to 8 inches or so forehead there.
The size of the head, could you think of a common household object that would be the same size as the head that you saw on it?
Probably the size of its head would be, I don't know, as far as a household item, I would have to say maybe a washer and dryer door or something like that. It was fairly large.
Really?
That's fairly large. It was a really big style of an animal. It was, like I said, at first appearance, it looked like it was almost like a box carving of one until I realized it was an actual Bigfoot.
What about the size of the hands?
The hands looked to be pretty big and they had hair on the backside. I noticed the whole thing was in hair, head to toe.
Were they, so it'd be a similar question. Were the hands the size of any other object that you could think of?
They were the size of a toaster or so.
Okay, cool. Some people, so thinking back to the face of the Sasquatch, the brow ridge, did you notice anything particular about the brow ridge of what you saw?
Yeah, he had hair for eyebrows. Definitely had hair there. I didn't notice a whole lot. The facial hair was just shaggy, I guess, like Scooby and Shaggy. It was just looked about like that and wasn't any different color than anything else.
Sure. Was it a pronounced brow ridge at all? Some people will say that's pronounced sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely was. I guess if you would, whatever the male characteristics of the eyebrow would be, it definitely looked to be a boy.
The eyes of what you saw, were they all one color, or were you able to see whites to the eyes as well?
They look to be brown. I had my binoculars up. I got a pair of
Oh,
Leupold
wow.
gold ring, really high quality binoculars. But his eyes looked to be brown. I didn't really notice any variation in color there.
All brown across the eye.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. How would you describe the nose of what you saw?
Big, and maybe a little bit bulbous, I guess you would say.
Was there hair on the nose or no hair?
No hair on the nose. Nope.
Would you describe it a nose more similar to a human or human relative or to an ape?
More of an African American descent, I guess you would say. Just a bigger style nose like that.
Sure. Was it flattened against the face or?
No, it protruded out a little bit. It was pretty pronounced.
All right. Did the nostrils do anything in particular that you noticed?
Didn't really notice that too much. I didn't notice that too much. Just the overall, just the being itself and what it was that we were looking at.
Absolutely. And I'm asking you very detailed questions just because it's super unique case where you're trained to observe things, but also you had binoculars. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, and it was clear. And at first, it was almost the same color as an elk is what caught my eye. And so immediately upon seeing that, and I yelled at my dad, I said, look, it's a Bigfoot. And we just couldn't believe what we were looking at. So my dad's hunted his whole life. He's 75 years old, and he's taken me out since I was a baby and spent my entire life outdoors. So I would definitely know if it was any other type of animal. I've seen them all. I know every animal that's out in the outdoor kingdom. This was of no other species that I've ever known of. That's for sure.
I have three more face questions. So the area underneath the nose and it goes down to the top lip, it's called the philtrum. Did you notice anything about that area of the face, like how long it was, things like that?
It was pretty long and good looking, like almost, I guess, bearded face to it. But between his nose and the mouth, there was probably a good 3 inches or so.
Okay. Interesting. The lips or the mouth, how would you describe how that looked?
Big. They looked pretty big lips on it that were maybe, I don't know, a good 1/2 inch around as far as the lips themselves.
Gotcha.
It had pretty good bigger cheekbone looking to its face as well. Its cheekbones look to be pretty big and pronounced for an animal that would have a lot of power in its face.
Were you able to see it? Did it open its mouth, show its teeth at all, or was it a closed mouth the whole time?
Nope, it had its closed mouth. It appeared to be very calm and just literally gazing out across the bay.
That would have been absolutely incredible to see that. It was
incredible. It was something crazy. It was absolutely insane that I couldn't believe what we were looking at.
Wow. What was the conversation like in the car after you guys drove away?
It was unbelievable. We couldn't believe. We were freaking out. I was calling my brother. I was telling all my hunting buddies that I just seen a Bigfoot, a real live Bigfoot on the side of the road, and it was pretty insane. We couldn't believe what we were seeing.
Is this your first time sharing it with anyone, or did you share it with a lot of people or organizations as well?
No, I haven't shared it with anybody, just other than just some close companions, a couple friends, and some hunting buddies that we have. Of course, my dad shared it with a couple of his hunting buddies, and that's about it.
Would you be able to mark on a map the exact location to best of your memory where you saw it?
Absolutely. Okay. I looked exactly. We were at the milepost 1, I believe it is, after you get off the bridge there, marking 1 mile. It was exactly at the marker there, right, just heading towards Nacelle. It would be heading east from the Astoria-Megler Bridge, 1 mile exactly. You have river on one side of you, 5 miles of river on one side of you, or land on the other, and it was right there in the forest, 80 feet off.
So just to make sure I have this right, so you were headed over the bridge, then you go, there's like a T. And
we were headed under the bridge. It's just where the bridge is there. We were coming from Chinook to Nacelle, and just as you go by the Astoria-Megler Bridge, it was exactly 1 mile on the left-hand side.
Okay, got it. Yep, very interesting. The way it moved or what you saw, you said that you have hunted so many animals, like all pretty much all the animals you're aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did it remind you of any other animals that you've seen out
No,
there? Or?
not even close. Nothing even close. Nothing in the world like this. Nothing. Absolutely different than anything that's out in the outdoors that I've ever seen. It was completely different.
From what you saw, could you or would you categorize it more as something that was, I may have already asked you this, but it's such an intense description. I can't wrap my mind around it. So would you think of this more as like it was a human or an ape?
More of a human look to it. Absolutely. A big human, big male human that just absolutely was living prehistorically in the woods. Must live in a cave or something somewhere in the woods. There's lots of places in the woods to hide and that type of thing. They're real. I've seen it with my own two eyes, and I definitely would know if it was a different animal or if it was a bear or any other type of animal that's in the forest. I would definitely know. I spend 300 days a year out in the outdoors. So this was a humanoid Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
It was a Bigfoot. It was absolute Bigfoot.
So almost 2 months ago is when this happened for you. How has this changed your life since?
Not too much, except for if I run into somebody and the conversation comes up, I just can't wait to tell them that I've seen one in real life. And so just a little bit different. I'm a little bit more cautious going out into the woods now. I don't think I want to go out. I've spent a lot of time out there, and now I feel like I want to have a little bit of protection with me because it was just such a big, beastie looking thing. And then it was quick when it got done, when it finally decided to leave, it was gone in just but a blink of an eye. It just was totally vanished into the timber. It was really fast. It wasn't a slow, slothy looking animal.
Okay.
It moved with quickness, like, of a frightened animal. It was gone in just a blink of an eye.
Was this before the town of Megler as well?
Yeah, that would be before that. Yeah, it's about 6 miles from Chinook, just 1 mile east of that Astoria-Megler Bridge there, the big 6-mile bridge.
Okay, got it. That's incredible. Holy mackerel. Would you ever want to see one again?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that I would love to be seeing again. And my brother, the first thing he thought of was, why didn't you shoot it then and get proof? And I said, I think it's federally protected. I looked it up, and it appeared to be that in Washington it was definitely a federally protected animal.
There are certain counties in Washington you would not want to do that. I can't remember to the best if this particular county is one of them, but there are certain counties you would not want to do that. You'd get heavily fined.
I would never want to. I don't think I would ever want to shoot something like that anyway, by no means. It was something that got to be once in a lifetime thing, and just to see what I seen was out of this world. Like I said, I thought somebody was playing a prank, or it was a statue or something. Somebody had set something out in the woods in just this perfect spot out in the timber that you might catch, and I just couldn't believe it was actual being that was alive and well like that. It was something else.
Just in case it wasn't brought up, how far away again from your car? So you're on the road in your car. How far away?
Maybe 60 to 80 yards at the most.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was right off the road, just in a little old clear-cut jack firs, I guess they're called, and some real thick scrub timber. It's maybe 15 to 20 years old, just really thick. And he was just standing on a stump, and the only little opening there was him.
How fortunate that you had those binoculars right with you.
Yeah, I stopped in the highway. We stopped traffic and just backed up traffic because I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. I'm not sure how many other people seen it, but when he left, there was cars behind me ready to go. It's right on the highway. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing to see, that's for sure. I really hadn't ever seen anything like that in the wild, and really didn't believe that much about a Bigfoot, and had never had any kind of encounters really like that.
I'm sure this would have come up already, but I'm going to just ask it. You did not have a dash cam or any type of camera at the time, correct?
No dash cam. The best I would have had is my cell phone, and that was the furthest thing from my mind while I was sitting there staring at it. It stood there for maybe 15 seconds or so, and it definitely took its eyes from watching the bay to immediately to the car stopping there and noticing it seemed to be getting a little bit nervous at that point.
Absolutely. Has anything out of the ordinary happened since then?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing.
Good.
Nope. Nothing at all.
Nothing weird at home or vivid dreams or anything like that? Okay.
Nothing crazy. Nope. Nothing at all. I just got done hunting elk in Oregon. I shot an elk in Oregon bow hunting, and then I haven't hunted with my brother in probably 10 or 15 years, and he lives up in Washington where we are originally from, and so we decided we'd spend the extra money and get an out-of-state tag and go up there and hunt. And so I just got done harvesting a nice elk before we went up there, and I spent the whole season out there elk hunting with him.
Oh, wow. So have you ever had any other weird things happen when you've been out in the woods hunting? It sounds like you're all over the place in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, no, not really. I got into a cougar one time. That was the only cougar, and I shot a cougar one time with my bow. And that's about as far out as it goes. Seeing even one of those animals out in the wild is pretty rare of an occasion. I've seen one in my entire life, and all the time spending out in the woods, I've seen one cougar. So that's about as extreme as I've ever seen out there.
Fantastic. Jason, it's an incredible sighting. It's probably, man, it is so rare to have a sighting like this. I hope you.
That was pretty unique to see him in the middle of the day just standing there. It was such a weird occasion. I immediately said, "What is that, a Bigfoot?" And I stopped the car. I'm like, "What is that? Just not a statue, or what is that?" Until I got my binoculars, and then it was looking right at us, just square in the face.
Some people will have an encounter and they'll just go on a side quest with, oh, I got to look into this area and see if the other things have happened. Have you done that yourself? Or
I reported it at I think there's a BFRO or a Bigfoot reporting site, and I put it on there, and then I did a little look to see if there had been any other sightings in the area, and there was quite a few sightings right around in that Nacelle area of other people that have. I noticed there was one on K&M Mountain, which is a mountain right there that goes from Cathlamet over to the Chinook there and Ilwaco and all that stuff. And there was another sighting there of one at night, and it sounded real close to about what I had seen, and emphasized on its big, giant, like a squared off chest. And it's a really tidal area down there. It's really swampy. I guess if you were going to hide from people and not let a lot of people know of your existence, that would definitely be it, because no one in their right mind would want to be caught down in there, because if you fell in the mud there, it could be over your head in mud, and it's just nasty, slimy area down there right in the coast there. All the tide pools come in, and it creates a lot of mud, and it's hard to get around in that area, that's for sure.
So you did report it to the BFRO?
Yes, I reported it on there, but I never heard anything back from them at all, or even seen the sighting on there. Maybe my grammar wasn't so hot, or maybe.
I'll say I know you guys listen. I know you listen. If there's probably a report for this one in the flats that no one has taken up yet. If you want to take a look, it's up to you guys. But also, if listeners have had something happen in this roundabout area, please reach out directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. The best way to get a hold of me now is through email, because I get so many things sent my way all over the place. But Jason, this is incredible. I'm glad that we were able to connect and that you were able to share what happened to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on there, and I figure other people should know, and I'm sure that there's been other sightings around that area. I can only imagine, because I've seen one with my own eyes. Definitely wasn't living there or was there at the time.
Absolutely. If anything else happens to you in the future, feel free to reach out, and I'll do the best I can do to help you at that time. But thanks again for coming on, Jason.
Hopefully I'll get a chance to maybe see one of those creatures again someday, but that was an incredible sighting.
Absolutely. Here at Bigfoot Society, our goal is to provide a platform for those that have encountered Bigfoot to share their encounter in a safe and respected environment. But we need to hear your story. If you've experienced something that you just can't explain, please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Then we can start the conversation. And I know a lot of you have not shared your encounter at all. It's been 20 years, and it's time that you get this off your chest, and then you can get some well-deserved rest, because I know you haven't been sleeping. I understand what you're going through, and I appreciate every one of you listening.
Bigfoot Society podcast, hosted by our captain, Jeremiah Byron, where it's all Bigfoot all the time. Have you ever had the urge to do more, to be more? Now you can by joining Bigfoot Society on the Patreon. Get ad-free episodes and even member-only episodes. Take part in movie night and even live video chats. Interact behind the scenes with Jeremiah and other Patreon members like me, Slaya. The powerful podcast goes on, and you may contribute a verse in our Patreon community. Carpe diem. Seize the day, Bigfooters, and make your lives extraordinary.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.